Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, home theater enthusiast and lover of all things tech, and you've somehow managed to get your paws on an Xbox Series X. Well, you're either very lucky or very good at the hunt. Either way, congrats. But now that you have the console, it's time to go through the settings and make some changes to make sure that you get the most out of your new console. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go to the settings menu, and to do that you press the home button and use the D-pad to go to the right and scroll down to settings and go to TV and display options. Now this is the important part. Now, the first thing you want to do is check your 4K TV details. Now this will tell you all the modes that your TV supports. The more check marks you see, the better, but if everything isn't checked, then that's not the worst thing in the world. If you have an HDR TV and you don't see supports HDR10 video, then you may want to check your settings to enable HDR on your TV. On some TVs, you have to enable that on the specific HDMI port that you have your Xbox or your console connected to. So once we verify that our TV supports HDR, we also see that this TV has support for 4K at 120 frames per second. Now here you can see what modes your TV support. Now if we go into this one, we can see that it supports all the way from 50 Hz to 24 Hz for the PAL region, then ALLM, auto low latency mode, VRR, and 4K HDR10, auto HDR, but it doesn't support Dolby Vision. Now your TV may support Dolby Vision, and if that's the case, you want to have this enabled. Now the second thing you want to do is definitely calibrate your TV for games. So in the Calibrate TV menu, this will be specific to your TV and not the console per se. So in this you go through multiple screens where you adjust things like the brightness or gamma and have it create a picture that you are comfortable with. But that's beyond the scope of this. We're more interested in the settings you change on the Xbox itself, not on your TV per se. So the place that we want to go is calibrate for HDR games. So the first thing you want to know is that you use this to calibrate the output of the Xbox to match the capabilities of your TV. And it's a pretty straightforward process where you just follow the instructions and move the sliders to a point that the instructions tell you. And the first thing it wants us to calibrate is the minimum luminance, where we adjust the slider until we can barely make out the checkerboard pattern. And depending on where it starts for you, if it's too bright, then going to the left will make it darker. So that's what we're doing in this instance until we can barely make out the checkerboard pattern. And this is a good spot to stop. If it looks like this, stop, you're doing it wrong. So there we go, and I can barely make out the pattern now, so perfect. Then we go A for next, and this is where it sets the maximum luminance. So in this point, it's relatively the same, but instead of having black squares, we have white squares, and we want to make them bright. So we go all the way to the right until the squares are indistinguishable from one another, and that's where we stop. We don't want to go further than that. And there we go. And with this one, you want to make sure that the checkerboard pattern in the foreground disappears into the white background. So we're going to make it brighter again until it completely disappears. And that's it. And after that, you have your calibrated image. So we have the calibrated on the left and the uncalibrated on the right. And depending on how good your TV is at tone mapping, they may look the same. But even if it is, it's an important step to do nonetheless. Now, the next thing we want to make sure of is the resolution support. Now, the Xbox Series X supports all HD resolutions from 720p all the way up to 4K UHD. So depending on your TV, you may not see all of these settings available. So because we have a 4K TV that supports 120 Hz, then we want to make sure that we select the maximum refresh rate, because the Xbox has two resolutions, the render resolution and the output resolution. So not because you choose 4K at 120 Hz means that the games will render at 4K at 20 Hz. No, instead it'll have its normal render resolution and frame rate, but it will output at the resolution and frame rate that you choose here. So now that we're done with the video portion, we want to go to the audio portion. And this is where we select the output based on the equipment that we have. So if you have just a TV, then having HDMI audio stereo uncompressed is fine. But if you have, say, a soundbar that's Dolby Atmos or DTS:X capable, then you want to select bitstream out. And then in the bitstream format, this is where you select the format of the audio that will be sent to your receiver or soundbar. And whether you have a preference for Dolby Atmos or DTS:X, this is where you'd select that. But let's go with Dolby Atmos, but since we don't have a soundbar or receiver connected, then the Xbox will give you this error message because the TV can't create Dolby Atmos sound. And then we're good. Now, choosing the correct output resolution for the Xbox is important because although most games so far are 4K 60 Hz, some games like Dirt 5, for example, have a special high frame rate mode, a 120 Hz mode, where if you select a 60 Hz output on the Xbox, then that mode will not be available to you when playing the game. Besides that, it's just a good idea to have the console output at your TV's native refresh rate. Now, there are some TVs that support a 120 Hz refresh rate, but do not have the HDMI 2.1 port to have 4K resolution at that refresh rate, like say the TCL 6 series. But in that case, you'll have to decide which is more important to you, because at that point you can still do 4K at 60 Hz or 1440p at 120 Hz. So you'll have to decide whether the extra frame rate is better for you, and in that case, at this point, we don't have that many games supporting 120 frames per second, so having a 60 Hz refresh rate for the console would be the better option in that case. And in the event that you want to play a game like Dirt 5 which supports 120 Hz, then you can always change the settings at that point if you so choose, or you can just play at 60 Hz. It's all up to you. But now you know how to do it and why you'd want to do that. Now, funny story, I actually filmed a gaming comparison of this Q90T QLED with the LG C10 OLED using my PC for high frame rate gaming, just to compare them before the consoles were launched. But I haven't actually finished editing that video yet, and now that I have the console, that video is kind of useless. So what I think I'll do is I'll just do a comparison of the QLED and the OLED with the Xbox Series X instead, and not do the video with my PC gaming, because I was trying to emulate the Xbox Series X, and now that I have one, I don't really need to do that anymore. So the gaming comparison between the LG C10 OLED and the Samsung Q90T QLED is in the works. Oh, and if you like my t-shirt, then you can get one for yourself in the merch store, as well as some other awesome designs, so check it out. I'll also be creating a video on the best gaming picture settings for both of those TVs as well, so stick around for that and subscribe if you haven't yet. I hope this video was useful, so hit that like button if you liked the video, and thanks for watching. Until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood Villaman saying be safe, game on!